guys, welcome back. We are doing lesson 15 for Wit and Wisdom. Our focus question today is, how do characters respond to the powerful force of the wind? And our content framing question is, what does a deeper exploration of sensory and feeling words reveal in Gilberto and the Wind? So we're going to be using our 5 senses again, okay? Remember, seeing, smelling, tasting, hearing, and touching. Okay, in this lesson, we're going to begin with a brief review of volume as we practice reading our fluency homework, which we'll do after this. We're going to listen for sensory words that describe what Gilberto saw, heard, and felt in the story. Then we're going to continue our deeper exploration of words by acting out how Gilberto felt during the interactions between himself and the wind. And then we're going to experiment with adding responses to a problem to a story in preparation for writing a story later on. All right, so let's share my screen.
Hello, first grade friends, and welcome back to Wit and Wisdom in Sync. My name is Tanisha Spears, and I'm excited to jump into our lesson for today. But before we do, let's make sure you have your materials ready. For this lesson, you will need handout 15A, which is Gilberto and the Balloon. You'll need your Wit and Wisdom in Sync journal and a pencil. You could also ask your learning partner if you could get some scissors and glue to complete the handout, but don't worry if you don't have those things. Pause the video now if you need to gather your materials. In previous work, you thought about how characters respond to problems and why it's important to have responses to problems and a resolution. Today, we'll continue to think about that and think about how to respond to a problem, as well as think about sensory and feeling words in a text. The question that we'll frame our learning for today is, what does looking at sensory and feeling words reveal to us? I'm going to read it one more time, but this time I want you to read it with me. Are you ready? What does looking at sensory and feeling words reveal to us? Now think, what do we call words that describe what we experience through our senses like sight, hearing, and touch? Think. Share with the learning partner. I'm sure you said it. These are called sensory words. Take a look at the sensory words anchor chart on the screen. We are going to be rereading sections of Gilberto and the Wind, and you are going to look closely at the sensory words used and add those words to the chart. I'm going to read a few pages, and as I am reading, I want you to signal when you hear a sensory word. I want you to point to your eye for words that describe sight. I want you to point to your ear for words that describe sound, and point to your hand for words that describe touch. Listen carefully as I read. At first, Wind is gentle and just floats my balloon around in the air. But then, with a jerk, he grabs it away and carries it up to the top of a tree. Wind, oh Wind, I say, blow it back to me, please. But he won't. He just laughs and whispers, "You." Did you hear any sensory words? I wish I could see what signals you used. The words describe the wind as gentle, but then says the wind jerks away the balloon. Those are examples of what the wind feels like, so I'll underline those words to remember them. I also read that the wind was laughing and whispering. Those are the sounds that Gilberto would hear, so I will underline those as well. Gentle, jerk, laugh, and whisper are all words that describe what Gilberto hears and feels on these pages. I'm going to read a few more pages, and once again, you are going to listen for sensory words. And when you hear them, you're going to give the same signals. Point to your ears for words describing sound, eyes for words describing sight, and hands for words describing touch. Listen carefully. And when I have a pinwheel, wind comes in place too. First, I blow it myself to show him how. Then I hold it out, or hold it up, and wind blows it for me. And when he blows it, he turns it so fast that it whistles and sings, and all I can see is a blur. All right, now share the sensory words you heard with your learning partner, or just share aloud. Okay, and now what you're going to do is you are going to record or write a sensory word describing what Gilberto sees, hears, or feels from the pages that I just read. I put a sentence on the screen in case you needed some help remembering the words that you just heard. You can also go back in the video and listen to me read the page again. Are you ready? Pause the video now to record or write. Okay, let's take a moment to review some of the sensory words we've already collected in this lesson. You will be returning to this chart when you write your own stories in future lessons. Let's review. For sight, we collected the word blur. For hearing, we collected the words whispers, laughs, whistles, and sings. And for touch, we collected the words gentle and jerk. Now, if you need to, pause the video to take a moment to stretch or take a quick break. When you're done, unpause the video. Welcome back, friends. We are going to continue our work thinking about responses, problems, and resolutions by thinking about this question. How does responding to a problem work? You are going to read a short story about the wind and Gilberto to determine which story elements are included and which ones are missing. But first, let's take a moment to review the narrative writing anchor chart. Remember, the setting is when and where the story takes place. Characters are who the story is about. Problem is the main character's challenge. The response to the problem is how characters react to the problem. And the resolution is how the problem gets solved. I want you to think about these narrative elements as I read you a partial story about Gilberto and the wind. Take a look at the story on the screen. As I read the story, you should listen carefully and point to the appropriate story element at the bottom of the screen when you hear it mentioned. For example, if I mention a character, you should point to the character icon. Listen carefully. Gilberto is in the yard playing with his balloon. Did you point to the character icon? Because Gilberto is the main character in my story. What about the setting? What is the setting of the story? Meaning, where does the story take place? I'm sure you said it. It happens in Gilberto's yard. Let's keep reading. Suddenly, wind grabs the balloon and carries it to the top of the tree. What's the problem in this story? Think, share with a learning partner. I'm sure you said it. The wind grabs the balloon and carries it to the top of a tree. Now, this story includes one response to the problem. Gilberto is angry. You are going to have an opportunity to add 2 more ways Gilberto could respond to the problem. But before you do, take a moment to get handout 15A, Gilberto and the Balloon. You can also get your scissors and glue stick if you have them. And if you don't have those materials, that's okay. You'll still be able to participate. Listen carefully as I read the directions. Cut on the dotted lines. Glue the story to a sheet of paper. Listen carefully as your teacher reads the story. Select 2 ways Gilberto responds to the problem. Glue your responses below the story. Now, if you don't have the handout, again, that's okay. You can handwrite the 2 responses to the problem in your journal. Listen as I read the story. Gilberto is in the yard playing with his balloon. Suddenly, wind grabs the balloon and carries it to the top of the tree. Gilberto is angry. Now, what you're going to do is either complete handout 15A or write the 2 responses to the problem in your journal. Remember to keep all of these materials in a safe place because you will be using this information again. Pause the video now to complete handout 15A or to write the responses to the problem in your journal. Did you write your responses? I'm sure you did. In the next lesson, you will write a resolution to the problem in the story about Gilberto and the balloon. All right, awesome first graders. Nice job identifying sensory words and writing responses to a problem. Next time, we'll continue with Gilberto and the wind, but until then, be kind and do something great because you are capable of greatness.
All right, so let's stop sharing. It is time for our deep dive. We're going to examine verb tenses today. So how many of you like to play a game? Most of us do, right? We're going to play a game, charades. So I'm going to call out an action word from the text, and I want you to act out that word. All right, for example, I'm going to say, whisper. How would you whisper? Great job. Grab something. You grab it, right? Or you laugh. Or you move. Good. Or climb. Great job. Okay. Now, what did all those words from our game have in common? Well, they were all action words. They all told us something that we were doing. They were all verbs. Now, all words from this game are verbs. Verbs are words that tell what someone or something is doing. So a verb is an action word. A verb also tells when someone or something is doing something. Verb tenses are important because they tell us when the action is happening, has happened, or will happen. Verbs happen in 3 different times: the past, the present, and the future. Now remember, the past happened yesterday, so it's already happened. The present is right now. The future will happen tomorrow or later today or maybe next week. All right. So what about the word whispered? Whispered. Whispered means it happened in the past. It's not happening now, but it happened in the past. And how the way you can tell that is by the ending, because it ends with an ed, and that is a form of past tense. What about whispering? Whispering means it's happening now. It's in the present tense. What about will whisper? That is in the future. That means you're going to do it later today or later tomorrow. And there's that special little word will that tells you it is in the future. What about this word? Grabbed. That's past tense, isn't it? What about will grab? That's future tense. What about grabbing? That's present tense, happening right now. So why do you think using verb tense is important? Because it kind of tells us when things are happening, right? In the past, present, or future. So it's very important that you're writing things correctly so people understand what's going on, right? All right, my friends, thank you for listening. And we are done today. So I will see you back here again tomorrow for our next lesson.